Alright, so you're probably ready to do something besides graphing. Today in 8.4, our learning target, we're going to simplify, multiply, and divide rational functions. Okay. Alright, so one thing that you need to know what a simplified rational function looks like. And you know it's simplified a simplified, let's put an A here, a simplified rational function is when there are no common factors in the numerator and the denominator except for plus or minus 1, positive or negative 1. So other than positive or negative 1. It's like when you reduce any fraction, you know, you simplify until there's no common factors left. And that's what we're going to do for these rational functions too. And another key thing about this is rational functions can only be reduced when the factors are multiplied. And this will cause a lot of problems for you if you try to reduce them when the factors are not multiplied. So you have to get it where all the factors are multiplied together and then you can reduce. So remember another way of writing this, if I have A times C over B times C, then these are multiplication. I can reduce these C's because that's just the number 1, and that would equal A over B, as opposed to A plus C over B plus C can't be reduced. Okay, so be careful here. This is where most of the trouble comes in for students. Okay, so let's look at an example. And we're just simplifying, so the directions say simplify. And it'll give us a rational expression with two polynomials. Remember, it's just a fraction of polynomials. So you can't reduce anything when it's in this state. A lot of students try to cross out those x squared terms, but you can't until you factor it. So nothing can be reduced here. So the first thing you're going to do is factor. So if we want to factor the numerator, we're going to make our multiply to be add to be. Two numbers that multiply to be 10 and add to be 7 are 5 and 2. Okay, so the numerator can be factored into x plus 5 and x plus 2. Now this is our a squared minus b squared, and so that can factor into a minus b times a plus b. The order doesn't matter here, but I was trying to show you that these two terms are common and they're being multiplied, and they just make the number 1, so I can reduce them out. All right, so this would be my final reduced rational function there. Okay, now our other thing we want to do, there's two things we want to multiply and divide. So multiply rational functions. You're going to get a lot of practice with factoring, which is good because you need to be really good at them. All right, so remember when you're multiplying two fractions, you multiply straight across. So this would equal a times c over b times d. Okay, so for example, we have 2x squared plus 4x. And we're going to multiply that rational function now. What we don't want to start multiplying this out. It would get very complicated and we wouldn't be able to reduce it. So what we want to do is factor everything first. Factor, then try to reduce or simplify like we did above. Okay, so in this polynomial, I can factor out a 2x. And this is the distributive property backwards. If I take out a 2x, I would have an x left. Take out a 2x, and I would have a 2 left. Then in the denominator, I'd have multiply, two numbers that multiply to be negative 12 and add to be negative 4 would be negative, let's see, negative 6 and positive 2. That would work. Alright, so I'd have x minus 6 and x plus 2. And let's keep factoring before we reduce. Here I've got multiplies to be 18 and adds to be negative 9. And so that'd be negative 6 and negative 3. And then nothing factors in this denominator. Alright, now we can go all the way across if you want to, and then reduce at the very end. So I'd have, if I go all the way across, I'm not doing anything but just combining them all together. Now I might rearrange here. I've got my 2x, so I'm going to put it underneath this 2x. I've got my x plus 2 right here, and I've got my x minus 6. I rearranged a little bit so that you could see all the ones that we have. So that's 1, that's 1, that's 1, and I'm just left with x minus 3 here. Okay, so you're going to factor everything first and then see if you can reduce. Okay, now we need to divide. Our last part of this session in 8.4 is dividing rational functions. Okay, now you might remember this. We've talked about it before, but you did this mostly in junior high. When you're dividing fractions, you change it into a multiplication by the reciprocal. So we're going to flip the second one. And then you would just multiply straight across. Alright, so let's look at an example of dividing. Dividing rational functions. So I've got this one. Alright, so first thing you're going to do is you're going to change it to a multiplication problem. And you're going to flip the second one, multiplying by the reciprocal. then you're going to factor everything. Okay, and so we can't factor anything in this rational function, but we can factor each of these. So two numbers that multiply to be negative 7 and add to be 6 would be 7 and negative 1. So that numerator factors into x plus 7 over x minus 1. This denominator, I can factor out an 8x. And remember, if I factor out the whole thing, I'm left with a 1 there. Okay, let's go across. And I'm going to rearrange the denominators. I've got this 8x that doesn't match up with any of them, but then these all match up. So I've got a 1 here and a 1 here. So my final answer is 3 divided by 8x. So remember, when you're dividing, first thing you're going to do is switch it to multiplication. Then you're going to factor out everything and then reduce. All right, have fun with multiplying and dividing rational functions.